Moving on now to Somerset County, the Eastern Correctional Institution has had its fair share of issues over the years, most recently a lockdown following what's being called a peaceful demonstration by inmates 2 weeks ago. The Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services say inmates were upset about a lack of recreation time and also issues with the prison's cable TV. Former correctional officers tell us they are concerned about understaffing. They worry that if it's not addressed, another incident similar to what happened at the Vaughn Correctional Center in Delaware is imminent. Some have even called ECI, quote, a ticking time bomb.
And protesters gathered on Rebels Neck Road today outside ECI in Somerset County to address understaffing concerns. WBOC's Brooke Reese explains why family and friends are concerned for the correctional officers' safety inside Maryland's largest prison.
Todd, protesters outside the gates today say the state needs to hire more correctional officers. Those protesters were friends and family of the correctional officers.
Carrie Carr helped organize today's protest just outside of the ECI gates.
Because these officers have been severely understaffed for longer than enough. They're constantly being drafted, which they basically can't get out of, and they're missing events with their families. They're tired, they're fatigued, and it's not safe for them.
Carr says she's fearful of what could happen to her fiance, who's a CO at the prison.
They're tired. The inmates see that they're tired, so something's got to give before someone gets hurt.
On June 21st, Chopper 16 flew over ECI. Prisoners refused to go back into their cells. The state called it a peaceful protest.
They did a fabulous job of keeping it as minimal as it could.
Carr called it a warning sign.
And it kind of was a siren of this is a warning of what can possibly happen.
The state says the prison was fully staffed that day, but Carr disputes that. She says officers are understaffed and overworked.
It's scary. I get a text every day at like 4:08 when my significant other gets off. And the day of the protest, I didn't get a text at 4:08.
Since June 21st, ECI has been under lockdown. State officials say they hope to have that lockdown lifted by this weekend.
Now, Governor Hogan also putting out last week that the state will be hiring a recruitment firm to help with some of these staffing concerns. Officials today said that firm has not yet been hired, but the process is being expedited.
The wife of a correctional officer fears for her husband's safety inside the Eastern Correctional Institution.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when something will happen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Steve Hammond.
And I'm Todd Carley.
More rallies are coming. Families and friends of ECI correctional officers say they won't stop until the state of Maryland addresses their concerns. The families say their loved ones are overworked and the prison is understaffed.
Yeah, a rally was held yesterday outside the prison, and protesters say they'll hold another rally next week. WBOC's Brooke Reese joins us tonight in the Newsplex. And Brooke, you spoke with that wife today who is plenty worried about what's happening at that prison.
Steve, Todd, Sarah Mister says when her husband leaves for work each morning, she's scared for his safety. And she has good reason, as WBOC has exclusively obtained internal documents of the staffing inside ECI on certain days. These documents showing a lot of overtime needed on those days to keep the prison operating and the possibility of understaffing problems.
Sarah Mister watches her kids ride their bikes outside today, but says all she can think about is that her husband Dallas is at work at ECI.
I'm obviously not the only one who feels this fear at night, knowing that my husband, who is my rock, will be able to come home, because we have young children. We have 3 children of our own, and we have a baby. Well, she's our baby girl. She's 6 years old, and she needs her daddy, as well as our 2 boys.
Mister says her husband has been working countless hours of overtime these past several months as the prison suffers from understaffing.
The mental stress, you can see it right on their faces.
On June 21st, Chopper 16 flew over ECI as prison inmates refused to go back into their cells. State officials Mike Ziegler and Gary McElhenney told WBOC the event was, quote, a peaceful protest. Ziegler and McElhenney say ECI was fully staffed that day. This post-assignment worksheet given to WBOC by correction officers shows on June 21st, the prison had 241 hours of overtime to meet staffing needs.
That wasn't the only day that officers' overtime added into the hundreds here at ECI. We also got 3 other shifts timesheets that prove officers were working up to 8 hours over their normal shift.
On June 10th, the prison documents show more than 295 hours of overtime was needed. And on May 18th, the overtime reached 298 hours on that day alone, meaning on each of these days, thousands of extra dollars were needed to keep the prison functioning. Corrections officers tell WBOC at times some of the prison housing units are severely understaffed in crucial locations. A recently retired corrections officer drew this diagram exclusively for WBOC that illustrates how one officer is responsible for 96 inmates in each wing of a housing unit. We showed the drawing to Ziegler and McElhenney and asked for their comment.
We are not going to, I'm not going to comment on a handwritten drawing by someone, I don't know who drew it. And that's a security issue.
In a press release from the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services last week, the state claims it keeps a low officer ratio of 4 inmates per officer.
We want to hire more COs as bad as these COs that are currently working want us to. We're with them. We're partners in this. And we understand their frustration because drafting is a problem. It impacts your life, and we understand that.
But Mr. says the current hiring process is flawed.
You know, the state has said they've been doing everything they can. Well, their best isn't good enough. You know, we need answers now. We need solutions now.
And as you saw in the story, when asked, the state would not comment on this drawing of the housing unit or the staffing inside. Now today we asked the state to go into one of these housing units ourselves, but Jerry Shields with the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services said no for security reasons. Now ECI has remained under lockdown since the peaceful protest on June 21st, and officials say they're hoping to lift that lockdown by this weekend in Westover.
Some more understaffing concerns have been addressed at the Eastern Correctional Institution in Somerset County, this time from a Somerset County department. Every year, the Somerset County Clerk's Office performs a grand jury inspection, as it's called, of multiple state agencies, including ECI. The purpose is to identify any needed improvements to the facilities. Well, this year there are 30 recommendations for ECI from that inspection committee. WBOC's Brooke Reese joins us live tonight from Chopper 16 above the prison in Westover. And Brooke, those inside the facility tell us that the list this year is longer than usual.
Steve, this report contains 31 recommendations from the Clerks Committee. And taking a live look tonight over the state prison here in Westover, most of those recommendations focus on maintenance and repairs, but 5 of them directly address understaffing concerns inside of those prison walls. This document contains 31 recommendations, all focused on ECI. The most notable are the ones that address the need for more correctional officers. Committee members say the prison is understaffed in every department, and there are not enough guards in the towers. But the report itself does have some inconsistencies. The latest grand jury report revealed the same ratio that correctional officers and their families have been telling us all along. That ratio is 1 officer per 96 inmates. But the report had a second ratio of 6 officers to 90 inmates. And when speaking to the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services today, they say they are standing by their current ratio of 1 officer to 7 inmates. Gary McElhenney with the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services tells WBOC in a statement, quote, "We have already remedied the minor maintenance items outlined in the report. We do, however, take exception with some of the numbers in the findings." McElhenney says there are more than 3,300 inmates in ECI. The inspection committee report only counts about 2,800. Regardless of the numbers, union leader Jack Hughes says he was not surprised by the report's findings.
They are severely understaffed. It's a crisis. Statewide, they're down 1,000 correctional officers, over 100 right here at ECI. We've told them this for 3 years.
Now that the report is in the hands of the state, Hughes hopes that with more talk comes action at ECI. Supporters of the correctional officers will hold a rally next Wednesday outside of the prison, and the group hopes to have COs join them there next Wednesday. Reporting live over Westover, Brooke Reese, WBOC News.
Disqualified for no reason. That is what two people who were not selected for a correctional officer position at the Eastern Correctional Institution say. The prison faces a shortage of officers and mounting criticism for those shortages. WBOC's Brooke Reese joins us live tonight over ECI from Chopper 16. And Brooke, the two people claim they were left in the dark with no reason of why they were not hired.
Steve, becoming an officer here at ECI is an extensive process. And tonight, taking a live look from Chopper 16, you can see one of the many housing units at the prison. Over 400 correctional officers are supposed to monitor all of the prisoners inside. Now, one of the complaints is that hiring new officers can take a long time. But some candidates that we spoke with today say they have other complaints about the hiring process.
Roger Kelly tells WBOC he's applied twice to become a correctional officer at ECI. Both times he's gone through the extensive hiring process, he's received an email like this one, saying that he was disqualified for the position with no explanation.
It would be nice to know what I've done wrong, considering they've sent me several confirmation emails stating that all the testing I passed.
Kelly says he wanted to become a CO in order to serve his community and provide for his family.
I have 3 kids, and I'm a family man. I'm trying to do what's right for my family. And in that process, I just feel like I was shut down, and I'm not sure why.
The benefits and pay for the state position is what sold Roger's former spouse, Arissa, to also apply for a CO position.
It's very impersonal. You get there and you're just a number. I mean, there's not really much of anything that you get in the beginning, any kind of interaction. It's very impersonal.
Both Arissa and Roger advanced through multiple steps of the hiring process, like the written test and polygraph, before receiving this email. The email says in part, quote, "It is a departmental policy not to reveal more information regarding the reason, but only to make you aware that you were not selected."
Because before you even begin the process of interviewing, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement that states that they don't have to give you a reason why they're disqualifying you.
The Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services provided WBOC with this email today, stating that there are roughly 8 steps to the hiring process, and each of those steps taking sometimes weeks or months to complete. But Arissa believes it's too long.
I think that it comes down to there's all these hoops you got to jump through, and there's really no reward towards the end.
Gary McElhenney, Director of Professional Standards, tells WBOC the length of the hiring process is different for every candidate. However, the state is looking at ways to make the process shorter. State officials confirmed with WBOC earlier this week that the state is hiring a private recruiting firm at the cost of $50,000. The state hopes to get a recruiter within the next month.
High hopes for hiring. The state ramps up its recruitment efforts at the Eastern Correctional Institution in Somerset County. Good evening to you. I'm Todd Carley.
And I'm Steve Hammond. Welcome to the news at 6 o'clock. After understaffing concerns were brought to light during a protest back in June, hiring changes are being implemented by the state of Maryland. WBOC's Brooke Reese joins us live in the Newsplex this evening. And Brooke, the state wants to speed up the application process with the goal of having 30 officers in training by October.
Steve, Todd, changes are coming, and with the second rally being held today in Westover by those who are supporting correctional officers, it's a whole different atmosphere than what we saw about a month ago.
On July 9th, the Support ECI group hosted this rally in Westover to speak out against understaffing at ECI. But just about a month later, the group returned today for their second support rally with a more optimistic message. Organizer Carrie Carr says tonight is the first step in the right direction.
Things are changing as far as re-looking over the hiring process and implementing more recruitment events and setting actual numbers and goals to get staffing at ECI.
During a Skype interview with Gary McElhenney from the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services today, he says understaffing has turned a corner and results are coming.
We are reviewing standards, making sure that we're judging people right to make sure that they're a fit for the agency.
McElhenney says he's committed to making the hiring process at ECI quicker and more efficient, starting with moving more resources from Annapolis into Somerset County.
We want to make it as easy as possible for people to get through the process. We're starting to combine some of our activities in the same day that someone comes. You know, if someone has to take off work early or needs to come down to the facility, we want to make sure that we're doing all the processes we possibly can at that time.
McElhenney says along with hosting more recruitment events over the next few months, the department will also offer walk-in, week-in testing twice a month, all with the goal of getting 30 new officers into training by October. Welcomed news for people like Carrie.
That will help tremendously because we'll actually have a control over the applicants and be able to, like I said, communicate with them, and they don't have to jump hoops to talk to people.
And the state's next recruitment event is scheduled for this Friday at Warwick Community College in Salisbury. Todd.
In Somerset County, the Eastern Correctional Institution could be getting tablets for inmates who are enrolled in educational programs. Some community members are concerned about inmates having access to that technology.
Especially when there is a staffing shortage on correctional officers at that prison. WBOC's Brooke Reese joins us in the Newsplex tonight. Brooke, one wife of a CO says state money could be going toward hiring those needed officers.
Steve and Todd, this tablet expansion program has a price tag of $50,000 so far. The Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention and the Maryland Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation are planning to split that cost. And some of the dozens of tablets they plan to purchase could be coming to ECI.
As Amanda Muir prepares a bottle for her infant son, her husband is upstairs getting ready for his next shift as a correctional officer at ECI.
You always just have this fear and anxiety inside of you.
Amanda says she constantly worries for her husband's safety, especially when understaffing has become a larger issue at the prison. And her concerns continue to grow as the state announced plans to purchase nearly 50 tablets for every prison's educational department.
You're going to spend $50,000 on tablets when you could be putting that into your own officers, your own employees that need help. And I just think there's better use for it.
Inside ECI is a school of sorts. Principal June Brittingham says for the last year, a pilot program using tablets helped to better prepare inmate students for their GED tests.
And the whole idea is for them to take the GED and pass the GED test, giving them one more opportunity to be successful in the workplace when they get out and hopefully reduce recidivism.
Brittingham says the tablets offer an opportunity for inmate students to improve their technology skills as well. But with the new resource also comes restrictions.
They will not have access to the internet. They can't get into Google. This is a closed program that there are specific programs that are downloaded to the tablet.
But Amanda believes the money could be better spent.
To me, this is kind of an unnecessary expense when there are so many other things that these resources could be used for. I just don't see where it's necessary to spend all this money on tablets.
And Brittingham adds that these tablets are going to be continuously monitored by a security company, but the details on how those tablets will be allocated to the various state prisons has still not been determined. Now, a similar pilot program has been started at the James T. Fawn Correctional Facility in Delaware. Steve, Todd.